Hey everyone, welcome back to a Liftoff PM interview prep lesson. My name's Kevin Wei. I'm a senior product manager, and I'm super delighted to have Philip here. Philip is a Liftoff PM student. He used our course, the Liftoff PM course, to ace his APM interviews. He's landed a few offers, including Intuit, and today we're going to dive into his experience recruiting and ultimately landing an offer at Intuit as an associate product manager. So, Philip, do you want to kick us off by saying a few words and introducing yourself?
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Kevin. So my name's Philip. I'm a senior at Northwestern University. I landed several APM roles at some companies like Intuit and Microsoft, and I'm super excited to be here. I used the Liftoff PM course just because I initially found the process of preparing for PM interviews really overwhelming, and I felt like the course provided me with a really streamlined, efficient approach on how to prepare for this entire process.
So, so let's get into the Intuit APM program. I guess my first question is, do you know if they prefer CS majors or are they kind of agnostic towards like what you studied in school?
Yeah, I feel like um I feel like they prefer people. I mean, I feel like any product management program prefers people that have demonstrated technical skills. You don't have to be a CS major to show that you understand. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a CS major to show that you have a technical acumen. You can show that by having engineering internships or having projects on the side that you built with a GitHub profile.
Cool. And could you maybe walk us through a bit your resume and maybe point out anything that you thought helped you stand out and ultimately get that first phone call from Intuit?
I applied with a referral from a staff product manager to the Intuit RPM process. And I don't exactly know what made my thing stand out. I do understand that they're looking for someone who has had previous product experiences and has an ability to understand technical subjects or technical concepts. And so I tried to demonstrate that by putting in some technical keywords underneath my engineering internship and also just demonstrating that I understand the full product lifecycle by making sure that every bullet point on my resume can be a story about a time where where I did something a product manager would do in a regular job.
Cool. I thought that was super interesting that you applied through a referral. Was this someone that you personally knew, or did you just reach out to someone on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so a lot of my roles, I just reach out to people on LinkedIn. I don't know anyone in the big tech industry, and it's usually just a message that I send out that says, "Hey, I'm a student at Northwestern applying to X APM program. Would you be willing to hop on a call and tell me about your experience with the program or your experience working at X company?" And usually people would be happy to hop on a call with you. And at the end of the call, if they like you, they would offer to refer you.
That's really cool. That's really scrappy of you. So you got the referral, and roughly how long did it take after the referral being submitted, until like when you actually heard back from Intuit?
It took around 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay, and I assume it was like a recruiter who reached out first.
Yeah, so it was a recruiter that reached out and they reached out with a product case, a take-home product case. And they told me to fill in dates, availability for the following week. And they wanted to do 2 rounds in 1 week to make it the least stressful experience possible for applicants. So you fill in availability for two potential interview slots for the entire week, and you present your take-home case in the first interview. I can go into depth as to what else you're asking in the first interview and what else you're asking in the second interview if you'd like.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like you did a take home first and then two interviews. Is that right?
Yes, so the take-home is something that you they give you around 2 to 3 days to do. And then it's something you do over a weekend. Um I had a final, I think, sorry, a midterm on Monday or Tuesday, so I flunked that, but I used all that time to prepare for the take home case. And then on I think on my interview was on Tuesday, and I had to present the take home case to two product managers at Intuit. One of them was a senior PM and the other was um, I think a PM too. And the take-home case consisted of two parts. The first part was a product design case, and the second part was about a time where I use product management in an experience I've had.
Cool. So the first one was kind of just like a case question. I know you probably can't disclose the actual question being asked, but maybe something along the lines of how would you improve something or how would you build something? It's like pretty open-ended like that.
Yeah, it was like, how would you design X for X audience? I think what really helped me with that was the Liftoff PM. The Liftoff PM course has a lot of material on how to specifically target those types of questions. I didn't know that, design an X for X customer had to be answered differently than improve an X for X customer. But that's something that the course itself clarifies, and I thought that was helpful as well.
Cool. Thanks for the shout out there. And for the second part of the take home, it sounds like it was kind of behaviorally. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the second part of the take home was to just tell them about a time where you use product management in like an experience you had. I talked about my experience founding my startup and how I talked to customers, um, extracted insights, created a hypothesis, tested a hypothesis, and crafted a go-to-market strategy and what the end result was.
Sweet. So you had this take home, but it sounded like you had already also scheduled the two other interviews at the same time. So you already knew that you were going to kind of present this and also do another interview. So yeah, could you tell me about like those two other interviews that you had after the take home assignment?
Yeah, so the take home, so I guess the two interviews, okay, so Intuit has this philosophy. They want to make the interview experience the least stressful possible experience for applicants, and that's something I really admired. So they made you fill in availability for an entire week in case the first round of the interview goes well, and if so, then they have you on for a second interview like a day or two after that. They had me fill in availability for 2 weeks. So the first round was on the first week and the second round was on the second week. And although they do make you fill in availability for both weeks, um, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have two rounds. It just means that you're going to be interviewing for at least one round.
Cool. And could you tell me about like the kinds of questions you were asked? So it sounds like one of these were was like kind of dissecting your take home assignment. Like, could you tell me how that call went?
Yeah, so the first round was entirely based of like why Intuit, why RPM program. And then it was also just dissecting the entire take-home assignment. You have to present it in front of two PMs. And I think I had like a 50-page slide deck with a lot of slides being in an appendix, but I also really rushed for time. Um, and so I think they gave you around 15 minutes to present the case, each case, and then they're going to ask you questions about each part.
Cool. Do you feel like there were any curveballs or anything you could have done differently to prepare for that take home, the like them asking you about your take home assignment?
Yeah, I feel like you have to do everything you need to stand out in this part of the process because it shows to the interviewers how much you actually want to work for Intuit. I see a lot of other RPM candidates actually doing user interviews for this case, actually doing like hypothesis testing by, doing ads or running an experiment. What I did personally was I actually did user interviews and I also crafted a go-to-market strategy and started with stage one of go-to-market strategy. And I showed promising results from that stage one. And yeah, so I mean, just you have to be creative with it and try to stand out any way possible.
Thanks for sharing your experience there for the first interview, where they kind of grilled you on your take home assignment. And yeah, super scrappy. Sounds like a lot of people get really creative with a lot of these take home assignments. Yeah, what was that second interview like in your on-site?
Yeah, the second interview was a design case, a live product design case, where they ask you to design an X for an X audience. It's very similar to the take home, just you have to do it live. And then after that, so they do that for 30 minutes and then they ask behaviorals for 20 minutes and then they give you time to ask questions the remaining 10 minutes.
Cool. And was it very similar to just like, yeah, like any kind of product sense question? Did they have any weird follow-ups that you thought were kind of curveball-y?
Yeah, I felt like it was not like a typical product design case in a sense that it was more interviewer led instead of interviewee led. So instead of saying, how would you, and this was not the question, but like, I'm providing an example, instead of saying, how would you design a fridge for the elderly people? And then you having to say, okay, we're going to do segments and then pain point solutions and all that stuff, they kind of said, okay, given that there are two types of elderly people, there's elderly people that are, you know, who have limited mobility, and there are elderly people who have full range of motion. How would you pick on prioritizing each segment? So it was a lot more interviewer driven instead of interviewee driven. And that's something that threw me off for sure.
I feel like that might kind of be the case for like an APM actually on the job where your lead will kind of give you an environment or give you some parameters and then you have to independently go and figure out what you do next. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good reflection of maybe like a day in the life of an APM. But cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, so you did your two interviews in the on-site, and then how long did it take to hear back from the recruiter afterwards?
I think it took around a week or so to find out. They sent me an email saying, uh, like asking me to schedule a call with them. And I remember I was in my lab, my science lab, and I was just really nervous. So I emailed them back saying, hey, before I sign up for a slot, can you tell me if it's good news or bad news? And they kind of like to don't like to spoil the moment over an email. I find that recruiters like to reveal it to you live. So they emailed me back saying, we were we re when we reject applicants, we don't ask them for um a call for next steps. And so I hopped on the call the next day and they provided me with the offer and entire details.
That's my pet peeve, which is like if I got an offer, you can just tell me over email. Like, but yeah, I guess good to know that at least in your experience, we're into it. The only reason that they reached out afterwards was to give you the verbal offer, um, and yeah, not to reject you over phone call. So good to hear that from your experience. And so, yeah, did they give you like the numbers in that actual verbal recruiter follow up?
Yeah, they provided me with base salary, stock, bonus, and all the health benefits associated with the role. Um, it was a really cool process. And at the end, I also found out that the entire process was run by the RPM themselves. So it was the RPMs that were the current Intuit RPMs that were screening resumes to figure out who to interview, and there was a RPM or an RPM alum in at least one of every each of the, every sorry, and there's okay, so in every interview round there are two people, and at least one of those people are RPM alumni or current RPMs. So RPMs are a big part of the entire process of recruiting new RPMs, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. All right. Well, thanks, Philip, for sharing your insights here. And it's yeah, really interesting to hear about the kinds of questions that you got asked here, as well as the end-to-end process and how you ended up getting an offer. So yeah, for the viewers who are watching at home, if you also want to ace your APM or product management interview, feel free to check out the free lessons on the Liftoff PM channel. And if you like what you see, we have a lot more lessons, a complete premium course. You can click the join button below. You'll access the complete Liftoff PM course. It has everything that you need to ace your APM interview, just like Philip did. And yeah, good luck with your upcoming interviews, and we'll see you in our future videos.